It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. The sun rose steadily over the bustling streets as the city slowly awakened to another day. The sidewalks were dotted with people rushing to work, sipping coffee, and engaging in small talk. The morning seemed calm, ordinary, just like any other day. Among the city's early risers was a man dressed in a crisp navy blue suit, walking with confidence through the busy streets. His destination? A well-known restaurant, Havens. The man's name was David Carter. To an onlooker, David seemed like any other professional heading out for a good breakfast before a busy day. What no one in that restaurant realized at first glance was that this man wasn't just a customer. He was, in fact, the owner of the restaurant. David Carter had built Havens from the ground up. Born and raised on the south side of Chicago, his journey to success hadn't been easy. Growing up in a neighborhood riddled with challenges, David had learned the value of perseverance early on. Through sheer grit and determination, he had worked his way through school, earned a business degree, and eventually made his dream a reality by opening Havens. His restaurant wasn't just known for its exquisite Southern cuisine, it was also celebrated for its welcoming atmosphere. For David, Havens was more than just a business. It was a symbol of inclusivity and hope, a place where everyone could feel at home. On this particular morning, David decided to pay a surprise visit to his restaurant. He often visited unannounced, preferring to see the day-to-day operations without any special treatment. Dressed like a regular businessman, he walked into Havens, expecting to enjoy a quiet breakfast while observing how things were running. But what awaited him that morning was anything but ordinary. The moment David stepped inside, he noticed something strange. Instead of being greeted with the usual warmth he had worked so hard to instill in his staff, he was met with cold stares and whispered remarks. Behind the host's stand stood Bridget, a new hire who had been working at Havens for only 2 weeks. Her reaction to David's presence was immediate and unmistakable. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice sharp and unwelcoming. David smiled politely. "Table for one, please." Bridget's eyes narrowed. Instead of responding with professionalism, she crossed her arms and scanned him from head to toe with a look of clear disapproval. "We don't have any tables open right now," she said flatly. David glanced around. The dining area wasn't full. Several empty tables were clearly visible. He raised an eyebrow but chose not to press the issue. Instead, he nodded and said calmly, "All right, I'll wait." He took a seat in the waiting area, remaining composed despite the obvious hostility. Minutes turned into 20. As David sat there, he couldn't help but notice the behavior of the staff. Bridget exchanged whispers with a waiter, and both glanced at him with smirks. Another server chuckled after Bridget muttered something under her breath. The atmosphere grew more tense with each passing moment, but David maintained his composure. Finally, his patience began to wear thin. He approached the host's stand again. "Excuse me," he said, his tone still polite. "Any updates on my table?" Bridget sighed loudly, rolling her eyes as if he were inconveniencing her. "Listen, sir," she said, her voice louder now, drawing the attention of nearby customers. "I don't know what you're doing here, but this isn't the kind of place for people like you." David froze. The weight of her words hit him like a ton of bricks. For a moment he stood there, stunned by the open hostility. "Excuse me?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "You heard me," Bridget snapped, her tone dripping with disdain. Before David could respond, Rick, the manager on duty, approached. Rick's expression was already accusatory, as if he had made up his mind about the situation without hearing a word. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, looking directly at David. "This man refuses to leave," Bridget said, her voice filled with exaggerated indignation. Rick turned to David, scowling. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." David's polite demeanor began to fade. Folding his arms, he looked Rick in the eye. "I'd like to speak to the manager," he said firmly. "I am the manager," Rick replied, his tone laced with arrogance. David nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Then you might want to double-check the owner's name on the lease," he said, "because this is my restaurant." For a moment, there was silence. Both Rick and Bridget stared at David in disbelief. Bridget let out a nervous laugh. "You? The owner? That's a good one," she sneered. Without saying another word, David pulled out his phone. He opened an official email bearing Haven's branding and his signature as the owner. He held it up for both of them to see. Rick stammered, his confidence crumbling. I didn't know." "You didn't know what?" David asked, his voice steady but stern. "That a black man could own a place like this?" By now, customers were watching the scene unfold, many recording it on their phones. David turned to Rick and Bridget, his expression resolute. "You're both fired. Effective immediately." Bridget's face turned red. "You can't do that," she protested. "I absolutely can," David replied, "and I just did." But David wasn't done. He called the remaining staff together, addressing them with calm authority. "This restaurant was built to make everyone feel welcome," he said, his voice steady but firm. "If any of you think discrimination is acceptable, you can leave right now." Some employees nodded in agreement while others shifted uncomfortably. The message was clear. Haven's had no room for prejudice. The customers erupted into applause, many praising David for taking a stand. One woman approached him as the crowd began to disperse. "Thank you for standing up to that," she said. "People need to see there are consequences for this kind of behavior." Within hours, a video of the confrontation went viral, amassing millions of views. People around the world praised David for his courage and composure. News outlets picked up the story, commending his swift and decisive actions. "I didn't do this for attention," David told a reporter in a later interview. "I did it because it was the right thing to do. No one should be treated like that, especially in a place that's supposed to feel like home." The public's response was overwhelming. Customers flocked to Haven's, eager to support a business that stood for equality and inclusion. The restaurant's reputation soared, and it became a symbol of hope and justice. But not everyone emerged unscathed. Rick and Bridget faced severe public backlash. Their names and actions were shared widely across social media, making it difficult for them to recover professionally. Months later, David received an unexpected email from Rick. It was an apology and a confession. Rick admitted that the previous owner of Haven's, Bradshaw, had pressured him to create bad press for the restaurant. Upset that a black man now owned the business, Bradshaw had offered Rick a substantial bribe to sabotage David's success. David was shocked but determined to take action. He filed a lawsuit against Bradshaw, uncovering evidence of deliberate sabotage. The case ended with Bradshaw paying a hefty settlement, which David used to support anti-racism initiatives and expand Haven's. Years later, Haven's had grown into a nationwide chain. At every location, a simple yet powerful message was prominently displayed. "Everyone is welcome at our table." David's actions created ripples of change. What started as an attempt to belittle him became a powerful stand for justice and equality. His courage inspired others to confront discrimination and fight for what's right. This story reminds us that even in the face of adversity, one person's bravery can spark meaningful change. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Unfolded Tales Explained. Together, we can create a more inclusive and just world.